Hey, good evening, everybody. This is Jeff, Junior Hockey Advisor. It is Monday night. It's in April. I can't believe we're still broadcasting. It's going to be a good night tonight. We're just going to spend a little time talking about the offseason here and prepping for the offseason and what your plans are for the offseason. We got to wait till we get a little bit of a crowd going Monday night. I don't know what's going to happen because of this basketball thing. I think it's pretty boring. I think actually there's more excitement on the women's side of the NCAA brackets than there was on the men's side. At least they were talking smack and pushing each other around and starting fights in the handshake lines. That's always fun. So anyway, tonight, of course it's Ask Me Anything. Of course you get a chance to put your comments in, say hello. We are monitoring all of our different boards, our comment boards. So if you see some comments, let us know. As not usual on Monday night, but fairly commonly, we've got Bloomer on the line, so I'll get Bloomer on, and we can start a little chat here about hockey if he's there. Bloomer!
What's up, Jeff?
I got to get this little thing off your face.
I'll just have to move around, see?
Yeah, you keep trying. Yeah, there we go. Perfect. Anyway, how you doing, Bloom?
Not bad. Just, watching some baseball. I'm still excited about that starting up, but not tuning into the basketball for any reason.
Yeah, that's the kind of way I felt, There's times where I'd like to watch it and when there's a little bit more hype and a little more excitement, but this didn't seem to be there for me for this one. So anyway, we're here to talk hockey. If you're out there, this is Junior Hockey Advisor. What we do is we talk about the process on Monday night. We talk about what it takes to get from 15s and 16s to 18s to juniors, from high school to juniors, from prep school to juniors, and then from juniors on to college. And don't forget, all roads lead to juniors. No matter what you think, no matter where you're at, all roads lead to juniors. There's very few. Now, you can get your commitment before juniors, but even that is becoming a little bit less compared to what we used to see. What we used to see is I think they were down to 4-year-olds. They were committing 4 or 5-year-olds to play, especially the big schools. I think that's funny is, it wasn't small schools trying to get a head start on the big schools. It was the big schools. This is going back 5, 6, 8 years ago. They started signing the 14-year-olds, getting commitments from them. It was funny. And you just wondered, how far down would they go? And, that's the days when you really started counting up the amount of commitments, because you'd see a team that's got, 18 commitments for 1 year, 5 years from now. You're like, that ain't going to happen, And then you started realizing that it's not as pure as you think when you get into the commitment realm of Division I hockey. So anyway, I'm Jeff Colson. That's Mike Bloom. We have something in common. We both work in the junior hockey world. We both work in the scouting as player personnel development. Whatever title you want to give me, I'll take. That's what we do. We're in this. We're in this on a daily basis. I've been doing this for over 35 years. Master certified coach. Been an owner, general manager, coach. Master certified thing doesn't mean a thing to me, but parents think that's important. I don't know. Bloomer, you got that certification stuff going too?
I am a level 4. Even though I went to level 5, I didn't do the thesis, so I don't get credit for being.
Do the thesis.
I went like 4 years ago. I can't do it now. I got to go through the whole level 5 again.
Wow. I'd just knock off the thesis and be done with it. So Anyway, that's really exciting. I see comments coming in. There we go. Okay, we'll get to some comments and some questions in a second. Let's talk about the offseason first. Let's talk about the fact that Nationals just wrapped up. We'll cover more of the Nationals on Wednesday, but I do have to give a shout out. Local Rochester team, Tier 2, U18, wins the national championship. Jared Blank, long-time employee at Maximum Hockey, a company I used to be a part owner in. Long-time assistant coach. Great guy. Always was kind of in the shadow for the first 10 or 15 years of his coaching. Wins a national title. That is incredibly just so cool. And so I want to say congratulations to Jared. Jared Blank, and keep it up. That's there's nothing cooler than seeing somebody that's put a lot of time and effort into this to finally pull some of that off. I know we've got lots of listeners, viewers that have got great stories from Nationals. I know a few names, but let's save that for Wednesday, and we'll save that for when we kind of accumulated everything, and then we'll have a better opportunity. So anyway, so spring's here. It's almost official because now that spring is rolling in, we got Easter coming up this weekend. The Masters is coming on TV starting Thursday. It's going to be really cool. Kind of gives you that feel. And the NHL and the North American Hockey League still have 4 months to go. So we know it's spring when there's only 4 months left in those two seasons. So, geez, can we get longer seasons? Isn't this crazy? We're going to be going into mid-June, late June, and still, having to, scrape out another win to make it to the next level. There's nothing better, Bloom, than going and watching the go up to Blaine and watch the North American Hockey League. There's nothing better than watching the USHL. I love watching these championship rounds, but let's face it, you could shave 10 games off of the seasons and it wouldn't change a darn thing in the world. I think everybody would be happier except maybe ownership and, trying to get a little bit of revenue. And thoughts on that?
Well, there's less wear and tear on these players' bodies as well. So I think if you condense the regular season a little bit, they'll have more in the tank when it gets to playoff time to really let it go. So, I'm kind of in the same camp as you where, you kind of get into these dog days and some of the teams have already clinched and it's more about just trying to stay healthy than it is about winning games. And, some of the other teams are just playing to play. And, you're not seeing the best hockey unless there's two bubble teams that are competing with each other to try to get in. So you're pretty much wasting, 10 to 12 games over this last month or so just to get to the playoffs. And there's really not a whole lot of movement that's going to happen. So, but from ownership standpoint, that's a whole extra month that they get concessions. And, obviously if you have a good building that brings in a lot of fans, they want to make sure they can get that revenue.
You got it. It's about the money. It's about what's going on with that. I understand that completely. But hey, look, off season, in my opinion, there definitely has to be a break. There has to be some time away. In that time away, it's different for different people. Some kids literally by this weekend, they're raring to go again. They're raring to go. They've got a few days under the belt, and it's not the physical drain at U16 and U18. It's the mental drain. And once they get past because it's a big build up to nationals. So, if anybody's gone through that experience, and I've had a chance to do it 4 times, made it to the finals once, didn't pull it off, but we came real close, 1-goal game. With that said, though, it's the anticipation. It's, you got to win your sectional or your districts or states, depending on where you're at in the U.S. But once you win that and you qualify, then it's the anticipation of everything else that goes with it. Some it's fundraising, trying to find the money. Some it's the preparation, the hotels and the travel, and all this stuff comes into play. And it's a lot of stress on kids. And in many cases, it's one of the most stressful championships, more so than juniors, more so than college, more so than maybe even if they get a chance to play at some level of pros, just because it's the first time with this. It's the first experience with this for most kids, and it's fun. But nationals, once it's over, that mental break. Like I said, some kids by this next weekend they're raring to go. They're physically ready to go. They want to get going. Others, it takes a little longer, and it's going to take a few weeks. However, it's a great time because spring break is, right in the wheelhouse here for a lot of schools. Families can take that break. Obviously, if they can afford it, some had to. A lot of families have to travel on their spring break, summer vacation money to pull off the trip. You go out to California or you go to Texas or wherever you're playing your nationals at. It can be expensive. So, but my point on this with players is, once that break is over, what's the plan? Have you thought about a plan? Now, I get it. Some of you that are graduating up, are talking about showcases, you're talking about pre-drafts, you're talking about main camps, and I get that. That's all junior related. But let's say you're 15 and you're just not going that route yet. You're coming back to U16. Maybe you're moving up to U18. What is your plan? What do you have in the short term and midterm for where you're going with this game? And Mike, let me get through this rant, and then we'll dialogue this. But I'm not a fan of old timers in our sport saying, "Oh, you got to put the skates up for 3 months. You got to put get the baseball glove up." My name's Bobby Orr, and I played another sport in the off season. My name's Wayne Gretzky, and I didn't touch the skates for 4 months a year. Well, that may be very true in that era, but there was also no right ice around. Where there was 10 rinks, they dropped down to 1 rink, and there just wasn't as many opportunities. And it's the age we live in now. USA Hockey is paired up with the National Ice Rinks Association, and they keep rinks up and open, private rinks open 24/7 now. It's year-round hockey, and you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. Of course you need to get away from the game. It doesn't mean you got to play in a spring league, but you got to be on the ice. My kids, they took a lot of time off from the game, but they still got on the ice once or twice a week, even when they weren't playing on a team. Or maybe they didn't want to train and they just wanted to play a little. So they went to one of the smaller rinks in town and they played in a 3-on-3 league and just had fun. And my daughter was famous for that. She loved to, just get away from training and doing lessons all the time and doing clinics all the time, because we owned a company that did that stuff. But she just wanted to play a 3-on-3, so she'd go play a 3-on-3 for a month or two, and she'd do that once or twice a week, and that was her way of keeping a little bit of flow, not losing the touch. Because nowadays, first of all, it's ridiculous. You got to try out right away. I mean, the biggest thing that, in the short term is you can only take that little mental break, and you've got tryouts in a week or tryouts tomorrow. Nationals end, and then boom, you're right into the tryouts. Mike, I know you've had a lot of experience with that. What are your thoughts on, we're not going to change that. The reason the tryouts are now is because the rinks want coaches to have teams, so they'll buy ice and practice over the spring and summer. If they don't give those coaches teams in the spring, those coaches, plus there's 2 or 3 weeks of ice sales for tryouts in the spring when they need to sell ice. They know in the fall, all they're doing is taking ice that they could have already been selling for teams to practice. So they put the tryouts here on purpose. It's a strategy. USA Hockey's bought into it. So I call BS on USA Hockey for allowing spring tryouts and promoting spring tryouts, because they don't not promote spring tryouts. There's a big difference there. By keeping your mouth shut about it, you can say all the USA Hockey officials and magazines and videos can all say, "Oh, take time off from the sport." Yet you got to go through spring tryouts, which means your overzealous coach is going to start practicing in 2 weeks, and it's 1, 2, 3 times a week, depending on how much of a zealot you got as a coach, all the way through August when your season starts. And maybe you got to, if you're in Detroit, you're playing in 3, 4, 5 showcases during that period of time too. So to me, you got to get away. If you're not having to go through that tryout process, you got to touch the ice some. But there's nothing wrong with playing tennis. There's nothing wrong with playing golf. There's nothing wrong with playing baseball. Playing a high school sport's great. Getting that varsity letter is cool. It's important for people, but it's a tough time of year. That let's just leave it at that. Bloom, what do you think?
Yeah, I think the tryout process is different here in Illinois than it is maybe where you're at or where some of the other areas are. So our kids won't try out for their fall team until I think AAA goes first somewhere in either June and sometimes early July. And then the AA teams will go for the midget level mid-August. And then if you're not at the midget level, everything is after Labor Day. So we really do have, development that we're trying to, accomplish throughout the whole spring and the summer. So the skates that we have are skill development, or they're like 3-on-3 or 5-on-5, just to keep them, playing in game-like situations and things like that. And then we'll do a handful of showcases throughout the spring and the summer. But, I have a lot of experience coaching the 15s, the 16s, and the 18s, just in talking to these kids about what to do in the off season, because to your point, a lot of these kids now are playing lacrosse, which is a great cross training sport. There's still kids that are playing baseball and soccer in some cases. So it's good for them to do that, right? It's good to play another sport, but you can't completely abandon hockey, because the kids that don't are going to be that much better when they get back to the next season than you are. And the other part is for a long period of time, as you got older, you got stronger. So when I'm 8 and I turn 9, I just naturally get a little bit stronger because I'm getting older.
I peaked at 9. Everything. Physically,
you
mentally.
You have the same body at 9 that you do now.
Once I was potty trained, that was about where I, stopped wetting the bed. Boom, I was done. No more growth, no more, physically, everything stopped there, athletically.
Yeah. So, we talk to these kids about the fact that once puberty sets in, the only way to actually get stronger, in some cases to get bigger, is it all happens off the ice, doing your off ice program and things like that. So, it's important to get with somebody that, can help train you. And if you're able, I know people are in different financial situations or whatnot, but if you can find somebody from an off ice perspective that is hockey focused,
yep,
and can train you on all the right muscle groups and things like that are actually going to translate to helping you on the ice, that's ideal. Because the olden days of going in and bench pressing a ton and getting the your glamour muscles all built up, it's not always functional on the ice. So you want to make sure you're doing the right things. Getting bigger and stronger, yeah, it's got some benefit to it, but if it's not the right areas, it's really not going to help you. So that is one huge element. But again, when you look at spring, it's probably about 6, maybe 5 months long, depending on how long your season went. If you went to nationals, obviously that's an extended probably 3 to 4 weeks onto your season. But if you think about it, if you break that down, I got a half a year to put into my skill development in my training, off the ice, on the ice, becoming a better skater, becoming a better shooter, becoming a better stick handler, working on specific things. If you took that time and put a plan together, just think of how much better you're going to be when you show up for tryouts the next season, or you show up for the first month of next season.
My contention though is, in some situations it doesn't matter, and hear me out on this. Nationals just ended yesterday?
Today.
Yep, sorry. Ended today. You're done with nationals. In many markets, you've only got a few days, and like you said, some states or some regions change the rules where you get a bigger gap, which I fully agree, but it's still not really much of a gap. Even if you wait till June, all that means is that the AAA guys have lined up what they want for June. All
right.
you've done is given the group that, maybe that breaking the rules, but they sure are expanding the edges of the rules as far as they can to get their roster ready. And they're doing small clinic skates, and they're doing ID skates, and they're doing all this other stuff, even under different company names. We all know this stuff goes on, okay? But there's a bias that comes with that short period of time. Mike, if you're my coach and I'm a third-line grinder, back in the day, or even for other sports, even for college where you get away from your coach, if I'm a third-line grinder and I've got from May, June, July, August, September, October to improve myself, I can come back as a completely different person. I can come back as and rebuild my image. And I saw it happen when I was playing high school. There was 2 or 3 kids that went to 2 weeks of camp. Now, back in the day, that was special. If you went to 2 weeks of camp, you were, first of all, you probably had a lot of money, because, nobody went to away camps. I mean, you might do a little day camp, but if you went to overnight camps for a couple of weeks, or 2 1-week camps, or 2 2-week camps in a row, that was big time. And they came back, and their shot was so much better. And there's so many parts of their game were better. And everybody's like, wow, look at the difference. And, they weren't our best players, but all of a sudden they were pushing, and all of a sudden they were getting better. And the coach noticed, and actually, and the bias that comes with this is, and you can't get rid of it. If I frustrate my coach all season long, and he's got angst every time he looks at me, and then he's got to pick the team 3 weeks later. There's not really a chance for me to clear his mind or to impress him enough to show him how much I've changed or how much I've improved in that period of time. It's not fair for players. So it becomes much more of a political game. It becomes much more of a let's see what else is out there from a coach's side, which pushes the parents to also have to make adjustments and possibly move organizations too. The system is not perfect, but it's not even trying to be perfect. And that's the part that drives me crazy. Either USA Hockey gets completely out of worrying about the recruiting issue and just lets this run is let every district handle it themselves the way they want to handle it. And some districts would put more rules in place, and most would probably lessen up on it and just control it more at the smaller level, the section level, than the district level. You can't control this right now the way it's set up. You can keep pretending that you're controlling it, but you know as well as I do, it's not a controlled issue, okay? So my point on this is we need to move to fall. It won't happen, but we need to move to fall to really see improvement in players and to really see the top teams, because you know as well as I do that AAA team will keep a third or fourth line kid on the team that ain't so great because they're afraid to lose him because they know what they got. They know that they've got that player, and they're not going to replace him with a third or fourth line player from another team. So it's one of those things where you're not going to – there's no real way. You can be an outsider that moves in maybe, but there's no real way for a kid that's a fourth liner to improve so much where the coach goes, "Whoa, wow, look at how much he's improved over the summer. He's a second liner now. He deserves to be a second liner. And maybe that second line kid didn't put the work in over the summer and he gets cut. So anyway, I know people have different opinions on that. And
well, that's interesting because I'm not as familiar with the tryouts happening so quickly at the end of the season, because that's just not how we've ever operated here. And I don't remember when I grew up in Detroit playing, I don't remember that being the case either. So
I can tell you right now, most of the Detroit area already has their spring showcase teams already picked.
Yeah.
And many of the teams, that spring showcase team is pretty much the team, and they'll spread a few different kids in there, but they'll also, this is only 4 years ago, 5 years ago now. When my kid was playing in the Detroit market, he was on a spring team for one of the major teams, and they were platooning 7 defensemen in there. A couple of those guys are NHL level guys now, which is kind of cool to see. But these are, and you were told right off the bat, hey, look, we're trimming down to 6, and they would use the showcases and the practices to kind of figure out who was moving on. So I'd love to see it if they put more and more in there. Let's say hi to a few people, then we'll take some questions. Every time, first one out, Junie says hi. How you doing, Junie? Good to see you. Right behind him, Frank's jumping in with nobody watches basketball. I probably agree with that for the most part. Okay, Troy says Mike's hats on correctly today. The fact that he's a grown man doing a professional, position here, this is high. This is ESPN and Junior Hockey Advisor, same level. You don't see Charles Barkley coming on. You don't see Stephen A. Smith coming on. You don't see, who's a good hockey guy right now. I don't even know who's a good hockey guy.
Paul Bissonnette.
Yeah, well, you don't see any of them wearing hats. So
I don't know, Paul Troy. Bissonnette of this podcast.
He does?
No, I could be the Paul Bissonnette of this podcast.
Well, you got to get funny first. Okay, that's the first place you got to start.
And I got to learn how to fight.
There you go. Yeah, I think if you're really good at fighting, maybe people laugh more at your jokes. So
they're afraid.
Yeah, you got to. Okay. How familiar are you with what seems to be a new fall league designed for prep players? From my perspective, it's a regeneration of fall leagues that happens every few years. I'm just looking at it as being just another incarnation. Mike, I don't know what you've heard about this, but that's the way I look at it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if we're talking about like the NAPHL has a fall league that they do. There's some other like conferences or leagues or whatever that have something similar to that.
Yeah, there's a new one. I don't know what the name of it is yet. I saw something on it, but I always look at these things as just being a recreation of. I mean, a few years ago, nobody had ever heard of the Beast, and everybody kind of rolled their eyes. Here we are with another fall prep league. Here we are with and the Beast has turned into something formidable. I don't know how long it'll last because normally these leagues have a shelf life, and your prep league's always there. But these different incarnations that come up for fall and for showcases and for even spring hockey, there's a few constants, but most of it has a shelf life. And it's not much different than development companies. Private lessons. Our company. We had a shelf life of about 15 years. Why does it change? Well, we all got older. Nobody wants to take a lesson from a guy in his 50s. They want a lesson from a guy right out of college. They want a guy that's maybe not as good looking as I am, but much, much better on his local skills and his skill development, So that's my thought. Michael, if you got any questions on that, or if you got any comments, throw another comment up. But from my perspective, that's the way I see it. Hi, Jeff and Mike. This is Charles from Massapequa. Nice to see you, Charles. Thanks for coming on. Frank is just lighting us up with all kinds of comments. Frank, I can't put every comment on, but I'll throw. Well, first of all, I got to put this one up. Frank says, I like Mike's shirt. So, Frank is your number one fan. He might be your only fan, but Frank is your number one fan. So that's good.
Hey, he makes enough noise. It feels like I got a crowd.
There you go. His question, though, is how will the new NAHL teams get their players? So that's an unbelievably good question. Some of these NAHL teams have already filled their tender spots. They'll all get an allocation. Usually a team starts with 10 tender spots that they get allocated, and you can gain or lose off that number. You can trade for them. You can get other ones for merit for doing league things, like if your coaching staff shows up to certain events to watch the 18s or watch the NA3, you can gain other types of those 10. One's got to be used in the NAPHL for a U18 pick. One's got to be used in the NA3. So you got 8 picks that you can go out anywhere, and universally pick a player from anywhere. So they're going to have those. What I don't know, and Mike, I don't know if you've heard anything, if they're going to get first dibs on the draft picks. That's what they normally do. So there's 3 new teams coming in. 1, 2, 3. Those 3 teams would start each round. First round, second round, third round is the top 3 teams picking. So they would have first dibs in the actual draft. So you'd have the tenders in the draft. That's the way it usually happens. Now in the past, we did see some, where they actually got a chance to go on rosters and unprotected players. Every team had to leave some players unprotected. They had a chance to pick up there. I haven't heard that yet for this. Mike, have you heard anything on that?
No, not when it comes to that. But I do think they do get more tenders too to start off. I don't know if it's 12 or 15 or whatever they end up with, but I think they get a little bit more than the rest of us just to help, build a roster. And then, when they get into the draft, I think the one thing that people always get confused at is when you get into some of the later rounds, when you see teams that'll say pass, that's because they've already maxed out the amount of roster spots that they have. So these new expansion teams are going to have a lot longer to go within the draft so they can make more selections when a lot of the other teams that got to the maximum amount of players that they can roster have to start passing. So they'll be able to build their roster out through the draft also because of that.
Yeah, so we've got 2 videos on Junior Hockey Advisor YouTube page. One's on the tender, one's on the draft. We break it down into detail for you on how that works, because there is a set number of protected players you can have coming over the summer. So it's veterans and tenders combined. You combine those 2 numbers, then you minus that from, I think it's 35, and that's how many draft spots you have. So if you're returning 15, 20 veteran players, and you got your drafts or your tender players added on that too, you might only have a few rounds of actual draft picks. If you're returning nobody like these guys are with these new teams, they have no veteran players. Although you probably won't see that. What you'll probably see is over the next few weeks, you'll probably see some people taking some trades to move some veterans onto these teams, because they'll a team will want to have some veterans, and they'll make a trade to pick up a kid, and then before the draft, so they're going into the season with a leader or a veteran on the team, and that's not uncommon. So you'll see that too. So the few ways, tenders and drafts are extremely important, and main camp's going to be really big for these teams, these new teams, because main camp, they'll always be able to find a player or 2, 3, 5, 8 players that make their roster. Most of those kids are going to be NCDC kids. They're going to be kids coming from the Canadian junior leagues that jump down, and Americans usually, and some Canadians that'll jump down and go to some main camps to make some teams. So I would expect to see a lot of fun there. Usually, you don't see competitive teams come out of this, but you get surprised once in a while. I forget who it was a couple seasons ago. It was extremely competitive coming right out of the gate, and maybe you can help me, Mike, who it was over the last few years in the NAHL.
New Mexico didn't take too long to get their program together. It used to be Wichita Falls. Now it's Oklahoma City. They didn't take long to get their program established, so they did a nice job.
All right, let's see about some other questions here. Pete, how does the GOJO, the Greater Ontario Junior Hockey League, compare to U.S. Hockey, and do NCAA D1, D3 coaches watch? Pete, that's a great question, and it's the GOJO is a junior B league, so that falls under the CJHL. CJHL is Canadian Junior, not Major Junior, which that's your leagues that the pros you really manipulate. This is still eligible for NCAA Division I and Division III hockey. Your highest level is the CJHL. There's 9 leagues in there that go from coast to coast in all the provinces, except Ontario has a couple more. With that said, the GOJO, you could argue that the GOJO is stronger than 1, 2, or 3 of the CJHL leagues by organization, by management, by coaching. The GOJO is not a bad league. It's usually used as a league that feeds into the CJHL, the CCHL, the Ontario Junior Hockey League, even the Northern Ontario Junior Hockey League. The GOJO feeds into those for the most part. Remember, we always talk about leagues of destination and leagues of promotion, the leagues that you can move through and move up. The GOJO is a league that you can move up from. So it doesn't get as much scouting from D1. Every once in a while, you'll see a kid get committed out of the GOJO. Every once in a while, there's a young stud that comes out of that league. There's some good young players in that league. However, it's not highly scouted by Division I teams. It's not even highly scouted by most Tier 1 and Tier 2 junior leagues, junior teams in the United States. With that said, there's still good hockey players that come out of there, and there's still kids that come out of the GOJO that can move on. And the one way we can do that is, if you don't mind, this is a great time to use our ability to look at elite prospects. Mike, we got to get elite prospects to sponsor us, because then things would be much, much easier. So I know I've done this in other videos. We've talked about this numerous times. That's my calendar. You don't need to see that. So I've got to switch that over to.
Looks pretty blank.
It pretty much is on this system. On this system.
I want your life.
Yeah, you sure do. Okay, so we'll just put in. Is that on the screen right now?
Yeah, we got our guy Anthony Noreen.
Okay, so let's put the GOJO in and type it in. Let's see why it's not popping up. There it is. Okay, here's the GOJO as a league, and we'll make that a little bit bigger so you can see it. Now, if I go down here, and I've showed you guys this before, to the first green button on the left side, this is the player stats for the year. But if I click on this, what it does is it opens up the ability for me to see where players come from. Now, I did this backwards. What I'm going to do is let's pick the USHL first. We'll start at the top. We'll pick the USHL, and we're going to look to see. We're going to use that same process, and we're going to look to see in the USHL how many players. We'll go down to that green button. Oh, I don't know what happened there. I'm hitting the button too fast. I'm going to go down to that green button in the USHL, and I'm going to click on it. Now, this gives me a filter. I'm going to go up here, and I'm going to put the GOJO in. So what I want to know is how many players went to the USHL from the GOJO. And we look down there, and we've got one kid that's currently in the USHL that came out of the Gojo. So one player this year is in the league. Now, I can also do this again by doing the null, and they give you a breakdown of the null. We'll do the null, then we'll do pick another league. What other league should we do, Mike?
NCDC.
Okay, so let me do the null first. I go down here, scroll down to that first green button. I hit that. We use the filter, and we'll put the Gojo in. There it is. And we'll hit that screen. And let's see what the null is picked up from the Gojo. So the null is a little bit better. You've got 10 players, 11 players, only one American, and you across the board, you've got 11 players. So out of a league of practically 30 teams right now, so you've got 600, 700 players. Your percentages of going, they're not hot. But I want you to look at something which is pretty interesting. Look at the point totals from the guys that do come out of the Gojo. And I'm going to open that up a little bit so you can see it here, because I think this is pretty interesting. That's pretty good numbers. The guys that do come out of the Gojo, the top 5, holy smokes. If you can put up 30 to 60 points in a season, you're doing pretty darn good. So these are, obviously that's the only guys out there, but let's take the first kid. Let's take Catalano here, who's playing for Maryland, and let's see where his journey took him, because usually it's not a straight shot. In his case, it went Gojo for one full season. He ended up getting some games in with Brampton. Then he went to OJ for a couple years. And that's a normal progression. That's not uncommon to see, the Gojo when you're real young, and then to jump into one of the Canadian junior leagues and then to move into the null. So that's a normal progression. That's not bad. That's pretty much. Let's pick a number, Mike. What player do you want me to look at next?
Let's look at Burke from Shreveport.
Okay, so you pick up Ryan Burke, and what a handsome young gentleman. So 03, London, Ontario. You look at his route. Started out in the Gojo back in 1819. That's a long time ago. He played in the Gojo in 1920. Then he's got 2 years of CCHL under his belt before he went to Shreveport. Okay, if you're going to be a Gojo guy, that's the normal path. You're going to play in the Gojo, and then from the Gojo, you're going to move up and you're going to make it into another team at that level. Oh, we said we're going to do the NCDC too, so I'll do the NCDC just so we don't have anybody from the NCDC saying we're not giving them a fair shake. Okay, I'll pull that up. And
obviously, if you did this against the Gojo or the Gojo going into the CCHL or the Nojo or the any of those Canadian junior leagues, you're going to see a lot more.
Yeah, absolutely. You pull those leagues up, you're going to see a ton because it is, the 15-year-old goes at 16 or 17 to play in the CJHL at a different level. So You're absolutely right, Mike. That's very observant of a very obvious point.
That's what I'm here for.
You're like my wife, Captain Obvious.
I hope not.
Yeah, in this case you are. Okay, so here's the NCDC. And you see that, first of all, 1, 2, 3 of the players are Americans, which that's pretty interesting. And you can kind of see that not the same success level, which is interesting, isn't it? You got the players from the null, which of course would be the better players, but they were the better players coming out of the CGHL too. So here's an interesting name, and I don't know if this is true, but you don't see Bonsignor much. Maybe this is the Bonsignor. It is. His dad was a first-round pick for the Edmonton Oilers out of Rochester, New York. So interesting to see him. Played in Buffalo, went Gojo, NCDC. So he made a straight shot to the NCDC, which is, that's fine. That's but I think we answered that. If we didn't, tell us in our comments what you think. If we're wrong, let us know. But I think statistics don't lie in this situation. That's Yeah, that's the way it works, Pete. I hope that helped. So yes, you do see some advancement into the tier 2 level. One is the official tier 2 level. You don't see much at all going straight to or into the USHL, but you'll see it go into the NAL. You'll see the best players, but it's never a direct shot. It's statistically, there's always an exception. Don't get me wrong, but statistically, you're going to advance into the CCHL, the OJHL. You're going to advance into Northern Ontario or maybe even Alberta and play in the AJ. Then you'll swing from there into the NAL if you're a really, really top player. And if you notice, those guys were all really, really top players. That wasn't a list to sneeze at. So those are really good young players when they're in the Gojo. So as far as older players in the Gojo, you will see some Division III programs that will go up there and recruit late in the season, and especially during playoffs. Usually it's remember, you're on a different budget when you're a D3 coach. So D3 coaches have to be very selective on their travel because they don't have a big budget. But you will see a lot of the programs that are close to the border that will get up there and watch some Gojo games and pick up some players that way. So hopefully that helps. Junie asked, I wonder how the NAL playoffs are going to be this season. Get ready. It's going to be my prediction is it's going to be a bloodbath in the South. It's going to be pretty much up in the Midwest. It's going to be a bloodbath. The East, it's going to be good competitive hockey. I don't think it'll be it's hard to come out of the South. We all know that. I would predict whoever comes out of the South, and we've got Oklahoma as the top team overall, but the teams right behind them in the top 5 there. Yeah, it's going to be interesting. Mike, what do you think?
It's hard to predict, honestly, because to your point, the South's going to beat the crap out of each other, and sometimes they can't get the job done once they advance out of there because they're leaking so much oil. Austin's got a really strong team this year. There's a lot of good teams. It's going to be interesting to see, but I think whoever comes out of the South, depending on how those series go, is who my pick is.
Okay, Pete's got a follow-up question. Let's jump on to what his question is. Thoughts on the NCDC West? Also, is it really going to only have 6 teams? Okay, once again, I said earlier that, when you've been around the game at this level for a long time, you kind of see things come and go. You see different leagues merge. You see them break apart. You see different things happen. I was an owner in the EJHL. The EJHL was a phenomenal league for the East Coast. Now it's 8 years ago when the league it disintegrated. It became the NCDC. When it was the EJHL, it had draft picks, NHL draft picks on the rosters. It had tons of D1 players in the league, and there were fresh D1 commits, not players that are picked up after they've already got their commitment. So it was a different model than what the NCDC has. But when it was the EJ, the same owners voted to bring the EJ South in. And when they brought the EJ South in, they didn't compete against the EJ South. The EJ South was just able to use that name, the EJ. So they became the EJHL South. There was no correlation between the two leagues. They did not cross over. They did not do the same thing. And the talent level never was the same. It was just, it'd be like right now, it's no different than the NAL in the NA3HL. Okay, they both use the North American Hockey League name and brand, but one plays at the 3 level and one plays at the tier 2 level. Okay, this league is not going to be the NCDC. You could argue the strength or the weakness of the NCDC. This league will be less than whatever that is. It's the greater than, less than little mark you learned back in 6th grade. Okay, this goes NCDC greater than NCDC West. No matter how it gets spun, that's the way it's going to be. Could it evolve? Yes, but remember, these are still the same cities. These are still the same places that have already had junior programs in the past. This is not, we're not coming in with guns a-blazing here. This is a resurrection or some elevation of some programs that have already been involved. I have yet to hear if this is going to be a free league or if this is going to be a pay-to-play league. If it's a free league, holy smokes, all that money is going to do is going to help fund the NCDC teams that are already in the model. How do I know this? Well, I sat in the boardroom for years dealing with this. I know how the back end works on this. Don't expect much as far as the ability for these to compete at the NCDC level. Give it some time. Maybe it adjusts. My prediction on this is, hang on one second, Mike, you're going full screen for a second. You know why?
Oh, great.
Still got that COVID. You could talk.
Well, I can just back up your point, because I think that the difference between the current NCDC conference and teams is still going to be here, and then the West is going to be here. So they're not going to be equals, even though they're going to be considered, both in the NCDC. So that's where the misconception is. And, we've talked on other podcasts before. The advantage that the NCDC has is keeping the local talent that lives there, that is not able to make the USHL. They keep them there playing NCDC rather than having them go across the country to play in the NAHL. And that's what really makes that league so strong. There's no one that's playing in the West, especially at where these locations are, that they can have to say, like, well, we're just going to keep our homegrown talent here and play in here like we do in the East, instead of having them go all over the place in the country to play in the NAHL. We're going to keep them here. They're not going to have that advantage. So why would the kids that normally would play in the East end up going all the way into the West? So when the draft comes and whatever else, if the West teams start drafting all the kids from the East, why are they going to want to go out there? The advantage was to stay home and stay and play where your city is and everything.
Yeah, and so you're not. These teams aren't going to draw USHL, BCHL, or NAHL talent to their teams. It just won't happen. Those will still be your strong players for the Midwest and the West. That's where those leagues dominate those markets. So it's not gonna change anything about where the talent's at. I hope they're successful. I always believe that there's room for junior programs. I mean, people say, oh, we're oversaturated. Not really, not at the junior level. We haven't seen, we see expansion at tier 2, but we see zero expansion at tier 1. We see teams dropping out at tier 3, and the replacements, if they become the NCDC West, I'm not that concerned with that growth being too much growth. Remember, it's still a free market. And what I mean by still a free market is junior teams fill their teams to the level of the amount of people that want to play juniors. They're not going to force anybody to play juniors. They can't hold a gun to your head and say your only option is to play juniors. You can always say, I just don't want to play anymore. You can always leave to go to college early and play ACHA club hockey at a level. You won't play at the top level if you're coming right out of high school. You've got to be a real rare player, but you'll play ACHA. So there's options. Nobody's putting a gun to the head for juniors. So if these teams fill up, that means there was a market for them. And there's players out there that want to play juniors that'll play for them. So, people forget it's just not D1 and D3, but you've got AAU hockey, you've got ACHA hockey, you got over 700 choices of college hockey at the college level. That's not even including Division I and Division III. So if you throw those two in, what is it, 80 and 80 or something, 60 and 80 on the Division I and Division III side, you're throwing up some numbers. There's a heck of a lot of opportunities to play college hockey. I mean, think about that. There's, ACHA hockey is 500, 600 teams now. So you've got tons of opportunity to play in college. So my only point on here is that most likely the NCDC West is not going to be something that's competitive, even in their own NCDC brand. And, that's the way I see it.
Well said.
I'm going to leave the name off this one. I'm only going to read it. And John, I see your question. I'm not going to use your last name because goalies, in goalie situations, I don't want to put you in a situation where this can be used against your player or affect anything for Trouts. But he says, my son is an 03 goalie going into his last year at juniors. He played in a tier 3 league. He's going to change teams, although was asked to return. Doesn't matter the league. People are already telling him it's becoming too late to find a new team for goalies. Is it really? ? The answer is no, but you got to work hard at it. There'll be teams at the tier 3 level that will, well, remember, USHL, there's a trickle down process and a trickle up process. USHL and null programs don't settle on their goalies once main camp's over. In fact, they don't settle on their goalies that first week of the season or the second week of the season. There's still goalie movement, and goalies more than any other position. There's movement going into the season. Midway through that first month, there's still movement. If there's fluctuation at the two top leagues, that means there's fluctuation. But I wouldn't wait. Don't use that as your, hey, I'll just wait it out and wait to see what happens at the end. It just means that there's a lot of movement with goalies. So is it too late? Absolutely not. But you got to reach out. You got to market. The great thing about being a tier 3 goalie right now is you really don't have to worry about restrictions about talking to other programs outside of the NA. So if you're in the NA, you can talk to the EHL. You can talk to the USPHL. You can talk to those, and vice versa. If I'm an EHL goalie, I can talk to the other leagues. Now, there might be some constraints about talking in your own league until things are wrapped up, but I think pretty much they're all wrapped up now anyway. The bottom line is I'd be reaching out. I'd be marketing, emails, texts, phone calls, whatever social media DM you can get to talk to a program. Reach out and talk, see what's out there. No, it's not too late, but I can tell you people are starting to fill in what they expect, and that's pretty much building their depth charts. Depth charts will be built, but the way it usually works is, top teams usually lose their goalies because they've got a veteran senior goalie that carries them. That's the norm in junior hockey. You get a really good goalie that's in their last year or second to last year. A lot of times you'll lose them. If you got a really good tier 3 goalie, there's a good chance he can move up to tier 2. But where's the real movement? It's on the teams that don't have really good goaltending. Now, some will actually, play it out and let the kid develop. And we saw that with a kid named Andrew Takix that was in the Null for a few years. He was a second, third, sometimes even a fourth goalie in the Null for a year or two. And I just saw him playing in the Frozen Four. He played against Michigan with Colgate. Didn't do so well, but he's still playing Division I hockey, and he was able to ascend out of that. So, if there's a position you can expect movement and get a good fair shake at, I don't care what goalie parents think, because goalie parents will say it's unfair against goalies. There's not opportunities for goalies. There's more movement in that goalie position per capita of players than any other position in any of the leagues. So yes, you can jump on that. Just be careful on, doing your homework. What's the output from the program you're in? If you're looking at a new team, how's their coaching, how's their management, how's their climate, what's their social environment like, but also what have they produced? Where are players going out of that program? Are they moving up? If you're an 03, you're at the end of the rope. You want to see a program that's going to give you a production to get you to another level. Make sure that team has connections to get you to solid Division III, or maybe even an outside chance of a Division I. Those odds are pretty thin. But hey, look, if you're a solid goalie at the tier 3 level, there's no reason not to go to a main camp or two for the higher level leagues. You always hear of success stories on the goalie side. Of a tier 3 goalie that jumps in and has a chance and boom, moves up the ranks. So, Mike, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think, being in his last year, he's got to make sure he finds a home that he can play, because you're not going to move up. You're not going to find your opportunity if you're not playing. So that's a really big piece. So I would look at different teams that may have older goalies from their team this year that are aging out, and reach out to them and find out more about who they're bringing in and what their goalie situation is like. And then you gotta find the right spot, because to your point, you want to make sure that they are a program that moves guys on and things like that. But you don't want to be a backup on a really good team that has a good goalie that they're playing all the time. So you got to really do your homework. But no, these spots are never taken, even if you think they're taken. Any of these programs are going to take the best goalies, the best defensemen, the best forwards, regardless if they're returners or not. Because as well as I do, there's some kids that think their spot's guaranteed and they don't put in the work in the off season. They come back and they get passed up. And, that could be your son if he's working hard to take somebody's spot for the next year to secure his own spot for next year.
Awesome. Well, here's a good success story, and I'm going to share this. It says, "Hey, Jeff and Mike, I wanted to thank you for some of the advice you gave me, which I forwarded to my son back in March when I asked you about a situation with his NCDC team. He just returned from a leg fracture, 3 months. Whoops, that's timed. I'll put it right back up again. And was not getting a sniff at the roster spot because the team was on a successful playoff run. Prior to the injury, he was a top 6 forward. My question was whether he should play on their premier team and then to get game time and get game experience. Your advice was maybe the coach wants to see how bad you want it, and that's what he did. He ended up playing the last 4 weeks of the season with and into the playoffs, which they eventually won it all. So once again, thank you. Clearly, that had to be something I said. I don't remember exactly, but do you agree, Mike?
I'll give you credit, Jeff. Of course, it was you.
I don't remember which one of us said. I'm sure we both agreed with it. And
although on our other podcast, I did pick the Pale Islanders to win the NCDC, so that's the team he was on, and I get the credit for that at least.
Yeah, you do, but what you gave me partial credit because I said if there's a team I want to see win it, it's Pal. So I get
no. That was not what you said. It was South Shore, and they made it to the finals and lost.
I like South Shore too. I told you those are two OGs. I wanted to see.
Yeah, but you did not say Pale. You did not. I'm not letting you off the hook on that.
I think we got to go back to the tape because I'm a fan of the management and ownership of Pal. So go back to the tape. Let's see what they have to say. All right, let's see what else we got here. What is the best way to get involved in all NCDC main camps, and how should I choose which ones to go to as an 06 birth year? Got invited to a few for both leagues last year, but couldn't go because of injury. Mike, take that one. That one's a good one.
Yeah, I think, you're definitely welcome to come to ours. If you want to shoot one of us an email, we can, invite you to our pre-draft camp and things like that. But, as an 06, it's going to be difficult to make a null team. So just have the expectation when you go into these camps of having the experience of playing against some older players, some players that are also playing AAA and juniors and whatnot, and use it as a measuring stick, because you're going to be in that situation 1 year from now, where you're actually trying to make the team. I know you're probably trying to make the team now, but you're still relatively young coming out of U16 to play in a league that's got 20-year-olds in it. So, I think it's a great time for somebody of your age to get into these different camps and get the experience of it. Obviously getting on these different teams' radars so they can continue to track and follow you throughout your next year at AAA. It's really good for you to start those relationships. And that's when, tenders come out the following year and things like that. If you know a program really well and the program knows you and you are tender worthy, then they can just offer it to you and hey, this is the place I want to be. I really like this staff. They like me. And it just happens so much quicker than I got to get you down to a skate and you got to go skate at these different programs and go through that whole, rat race to try to get your opportunity. Going to these different camps now, even if you're not ready to make the team, is so important.
Agree. The biggest thing is pick out 2. Pick out 3. You don't need to go to 5. Most likely you can't because they're all kind of condensed in a very short window, which kind of helps answer the next question along the way. The next question is, hey, fellas, speaking of tenders, is there a deadline for teams? To get them signed? Also, aside from the portal, is there a better way to see who has been tendered by a team for next year? Our 03 is getting a lot of contacts from coaches and scouts about the number of openings they have for defensemen. And the last statement is just trying to sort things out. So in the minefield, sort through the minefield. So a couple things there. I didn't know the portal was that there isn't as far as I know, there's no public viewing of the tender list or the tender process across the board. There's no portal for tenders, is there, Mike?
Not that I've seen.
Yeah, we've been doing this a while. There's an internal document that goes around so you don't waste your time, and you don't step on other teams' toes. You're not infringing. You're not breaking the rules. So we get a copy of what has been tendered and the date it was tendered as far as players, because that keeps us all on the right path, and it also lets us know what kids are off the market, so you can check them off the list. But the tenders, the deadlines, it becomes this time of year. Remember, June is the draft. I don't have the exact date in front of me, but first week, start of the second week of June. No, hold it. We're skating in our pre-draft in the second, so it's got to be 10th or 12th.
I think it's the 15th.
15th, okay.
Yeah.
So if the draft is on the 15th, which you can look that up, that's public knowledge of when the draft is. The tender after the draft really is locked. They're done. You're not going to see anybody tender afterwards. But I think you could if you wanted to. I don't think there's, until you remember, it's a protected list. All you're trying to do is protect a player into your main camp. Because once the main camp is there, which will be mid-July, mid to the end of July is when main camps happen. The draft and the tender, once the main camp's over, it doesn't matter. If you're not on that protected list after that, it doesn't matter if you're drafted or tendered at all, because if you're not on that protected list of 35, even though you may have been tendered and you got cut out of main camp, you're free agent. So the tender list coming into the draft, they're pretty much all going to be used. I don't know what the actual deadline is on that, but you'll still see kids tendered for the next 3 weeks, Mike?
It's usually there actually is a deadline for the tenders, and I think it's like 1 p.m. the day before the draft.
Yeah,
everything's got to be in.
Yeah, 3 or 4 weeks, and we're done with that process. So you got a few weeks, and this is there's programs out there. We're one of them that are sitting on a handful of tenders, and that's because our head coach just went to U18s by himself to see things in his own eyes. We've got Mike and I and a staff of scouts, but it was his turn to go and kind of put it all into perspective and see it live himself. And all the junior programs are ending. So now we're starting to get the inquiries from players, and we're reaching out to junior players to see if we're going to tender a player from another junior league. So that's the normal process. Now, some teams have already used all their tenders up, and they do that on purpose. They pick up their own markets. Every NAL team goes about this drastically differently. Some it's one guy. Some it's for years. There's teams that have an assistant coach that does it all. The head coach doesn't get involved. The assistant coach just fills the tenders and gets the draft list prepared. There's other teams that have people in the field, and they don't. The actual coaches get very little involvement in the field. People put together their tenders and draft lists. Others, it's a collective effort. We're in a situation where it's a collective effort in our program. There's a lot of people that have input, and all the way through the draft picks. But you got a few weeks, and it doesn't hurt if you're in a situation that you say your 03 is getting a lot of contacts from coaches and scouts about the number of openings they have. Hey, look, this is the time of year where they're going to tell you they're going to tender or draft you. But I can tell you this, as a person that's been involved in the drafting process, as a coach, as a scout, as a parent, bird in hand's awful nice. If there's a possibility of getting a tender and you can get it, for a team, that's nice. But tender or draft doesn't matter. Tender or draft doesn't matter. All it's doing is punching your ticket to get into main camp. That's all it does. Regardless, that's all it does. Hopefully that helps. Mike, anything else to add?
I don't think so. I think you covered it.
Well, this is bad news for me.
Yes.
Phil, come on, man. You could have at least lied. You could have at least said it was both of us, but come on.
I'm so glad I joined tonight.
Just for that comment, huh?
Exactly. You made my night.
Oh, so, okay. Hey, look, anything else, Mike?
I don't think so. I mean, just going back to the topic of, off-season training and what to do, I think it's really important that these kids put a plan together, execute it, and, try to do whatever they can the next 5 to 6 months to get them to get their skills developed and get their strength and things developed. Because, the one thing we didn't cover is if you watch these like college players or pro players or whatever, as the season goes on, because of how much they're practicing and playing, they're losing weight and muscle because they're playing so often. So typically all the stuff you do as a program on, like their off ice stuff, it's to maintain as much as they can because they're burning through it. When they get into their off season, they got to build it back up. If you're somebody that doesn't have it to begin with, you really have to start building it up. So, you got to use your off season to get yourself better, both your body better and your skill better.
Yeah, I agree with that statement, and I fully agree with what Mike just said. I also think it's important to realize that you get multiple opinions in any chance you get. Talk to your assistant coach, talk to your coach, talk to the travel director of your organization, all the people that could potentially know what kind of player you are and what they see as far as your strengths and weaknesses, and work on those. But they're all going to break down to one thing. Yeah, and this is the difference in our sport than any other sport. If they say you got to work on getting a better slap shot, go work on your skating. If they say the only thing that's keeping you from making it to the next level is your snap shot or your backhand, go work on your skating, because that's not the advice you want to hear. No, great skaters are never nitpicked because they don't have a good backhand. Period. Great skaters, the guys that can skate at the next level at whatever level they're at, never get picked on by saying, oh, he'd be great, but he doesn't have a slap shot. Okay? No. If you're a great skater, you're a great skater. You can bypass any other little skill if you're a great skater. When I say bypass, you can diminish the level that you rely on that by being a great skater. So if there's anything you need to work on in the off season is your edge control, your power, your quick start, your explosiveness. All of these things directly correlate to next level hockey. There has never been a kid that I've cut because he didn't have a good backhand. He may not have had a good backhand, but he sucked at skating. Okay? They both were there. He may not have been have a slap shot, but he sucked at skating. That's why he really got cut. You're not going to get cut as easily, and you're going to make it really hard if you're a top skater, even if your other skills are diminished a level. Put skating on top of your list and keep it there until you're done playing. I know lots of pro players, and they're still working on their stride. They're still working on their explosiveness, because you can do that off of ice and on ice. You can work on your first step. You can work on your explosiveness. Plyometrics come into play. But being on the skates and skating once or twice a week with a skilled skating instructor over the season after you get a little break is powerful, man. It's powerful. That's where I'd hang my hat on that till the day I die, that you're not going to find a better thing to do in the off season but become a better skater, including goalies. So that's all I got for the night. I was going to see if we got any other things that are coming on board. Now you got your fan base, your other fan.
Oh, Buzzy. That's my guy.
But just so you know, he comes right back with boom.
Oh.
Okay. Throws it up for both of us. Good to see.
Switzerland.
Hey, look, folks, it's been great being nice. We had a good audience coming in and out. Thank you all for coming on tonight. Hopefully this information helped. Remember, if you need more details on the drafts, you need more details on the tenders, we've got tons of educational videos on our YouTube page. All you got to do is go to Junior Hockey Advisor, go on the YouTube page, like and subscribe, and grab the information you need. We've got hundreds of videos up there now. Not all of them are just open forum like this. A lot of them are just small, short clips that get right specifically to a point you're looking for. So jump on there, please. And Wednesday night, we jump on, we talk just juniors. We talk about the players, the teams, the coaches, and we're going to talk playoffs, obviously, because playoffs are coming up. Very, very good series we saw with the NCDC. We'll talk about the other leagues. We'll talk about some of the other playoff series coming up. That'll all be up on Junior Hockey Live on Wednesday. Hope to see you there for that. Mike, thank you so much for jumping on. It was a great night. We got a lot of stuff covered, and I look forward to seeing you on Wednesday.
Sounds good. Thanks, everyone.
Take care, folks.